Hey there, this is Aggressively Mediocre, both the channel and the video, and this will probably be my first upload. My second video will be a recording of the Song of the Dragonborn played with panpipes, just so we can establish right out the gate that there will be no consistency to this channel. Now in this video I'm going to talk about Gravity Falls, a cute little show about family fun and paranormal activity, and some of the things I'll bring up happen really late in the show, even the very end of it, so if you haven't seen Gravity Falls already, I would recommend that you go watch that instead of this video, because I'd hate to spoil any of it for you. And let me be clear, I want you to watch it instead of this video, not in addition to it, because ideally I want to keep this video below 10 or 20 views. So, since the mid-1990s, there's been this idea developing in pop culture and on the internet of a friend zone, and it has acquired a lot of baggage and a lot of stereotypes that come with it. But the short version is, guy likes girl romantically, girl likes guy platonically, and this makes guy sad. And where a lot of the thorns come in is in most of the media I watched growing up, the guy's character arc, the way that he overcomes this problem and gains happiness, is by winning the girl's affection, or by changing her mind about him. For example, you can see this in Big Bang Theory with Leonard and Penny, or in Futurama with Fry and Delilah, or in Friends with Ross and Rachel, just to give a few instances out of many. And there's nothing inherently wrong with this approach, much as I dislike it. It's a valid character arc when well executed. But the issue is when most or almost all stories available for public consumption present this as the best solution to such a situation. This can leave people with the impression that if they have unrequited feelings for someone, that is the fault of the person that they feel for, not an unfortunate circumstance that may or may not change in time. This idea suggests that the friend zone is an inherently bad place to be, that it is somehow worse than not knowing the person at all, and that the best or even only solution to the problem is to make the other person change their feelings for you. You see, people on the internet, the stereotypical nice guys TM, who, among other things, complain about getting friend-zoned, about women treating them as platonic friends, about the fact that they are clearly the best possible boyfriends for these women, and what the women need is to realize that fact. This movement is increasingly associated with male feelings of entitlement, misplaced frustrations, and even violence, which has led to a widespread condemnation of members of this movement, to the point where you can't really use the term friend zone unironically without also invoking a whole lot of unpleasant baggage. In this essay, I'm trying to use the term more neutrally, since I do not know of an equally useful but less charged word to replace it with. Here, I use the word friend zone to describe a state of affairs between two people rather than to suggest any wrongdoing on either side. So, Gravity Falls. What I think is interesting about Gravity Falls when it comes to this subject is the fact that they have not one, but two characters who find themselves friend-zoned, and these two characters go in very different directions with it. The first one is Lil Gideon, a sort of preteen televangelist and business rival of Grunkle Stan. Most of his friend-zone arc happens in the first episode to feature him. He moves into town, Mabel relates to his chipper attitude and flashy clothing, and they become friends. But Gideon soon reveals that he would rather be dating, which Mabel is not interested in. He makes various attempts to persuade or pressure her into a relationship, with grand, public romantic gestures that make rejecting him super awkward. At the end of the episode, she does reject him, and his pushy attempts at romance sour her on the idea of being friends at all, but he refuses to believe her words. Instead, he becomes convinced that an outside force, Dipper, is interfering and causing Mabel to say things that she doesn't really mean. He spends most of the rest of the series in this state of denial, engaging in various schemes to murder Dipper and or force Mabel to love him. Here, Gideon is applying the messaging that we see in most popular TV shows and movies to his situation, with unfortunate results for both him and Mabel. The other character is Dipper, Mabel's twin brother, who gets a crush on Wendy, the detached teenager working for Grunkle Stan in the Mystery Shack. Some of his initial moves bear some similarity to Gideon's early advances, though they are much more toned down and passive. Where Gideon tries to control Mabel via social pressure and guilt, Dipper attempts to control Wendy by controlling the environment around her. At a party, he feels the need to enact a 20-step plan involving 10 clones of himself to create the optimum conditions just so that he can ask Wendy to dance. At a fair, he uses time travel to loop through every possible version of the same hour or two in order to find the one sequence of events in which he spends a nice afternoon with her instead of accidentally giving her a black eye, after which Robbie, another teen, brings her ice and asks her out. After a while, though, he comes to the conclusion that she will not be interested in him romantically anytime soon, and decides not to push for that kind of relationship in case it costs him the friendship he has with her. Now, of course, he could have directly confessed to her at this point and gotten closure on the issue a lot sooner than he eventually does, but nobody's perfect. After this point, Dipper's arc is focused more internally on coming to grips with his unrequited romantic feelings without allowing them to sour his friendship. In the end, he continues to be a very important part in Wendy's life, more so even than Robbie, who she breaks up with later in the series. This leads to the conclusion that while he cannot have a romantic relationship with Wendy, he can still be her friend, and that is just as valuable and important a relationship as any other, even if it's not exactly the relationship that he wants most. The similarities in situation but differences in attitude between Gideon and Dipper come to a head in the season finale. Gideon is charged with guarding Mabel's dream prison bubble, convinced that by helping Bill to keep her trapped, he will somehow gain a romantic relationship with her eventually. Dipper, however, approaches Gideon and speaks out of their commonalities, telling him that there's really no way to make a girl like him. All he has control over is the kind of person that he'll be. That if he really cares about Mabel, he will be the kind of person who acts in her interests and in the interests of those she cares about. This moment where Dipper appeals to what he understands of Gideon's motives and experiences, rather than just trying to explain the basics of doing this is bad, so don't do this 100 times, allows Gideon to see the error of his ways, turning against Bill and allowing Dipper and Wendy to continue on their quest to rescue Mabel. So in review, the idea of the friend zone has existed in popular consciousness for a few decades now, but Gravity Falls has an interesting take on it. Here they don't really use the term friend zone, but they do show us two situations that fall under that umbrella and two possible responses to it. Both acknowledge that it's not a comfortable place to be, that there is a certain amount of anxiety tied to having unrequited romantic feelings, but where Dipper turns inward and tries to come to terms with his feelings knowing that they cannot be fulfilled, Gideon turns outward and tries to force Mabel to return his feelings. In this way, the show, rather than worrying about the merits of the idea of a friend zone or the people who feel themselves stuck in one, looks more at the possible ways in which one can respond to this kind of situation, and how these different reactions may have positive or negative effects on the relationship. Thank you for watching, and if you liked this video, think long and hard about all of the decisions that led you to this point. Have a mediocre day, everyone.